All right. Well, I'm thankful for all of you. Definitely thankful to be an American. Tomorrow, I'll be racing my first motocross race, and I don't even know how many years, maybe 8 years. But uh, it was cool because I have my gear that I'll be wearing tomorrow is all red, white, and blue, and my bike is red, white, and blue. So I'll probably show some pictures of that or something. But my mom was kind of making fun of me a little bit because I'm a little bit older. I weigh a little bit more, not as fast as I used to be. She was like, "Man, when you were like a teenager, you would come off the track and like want to take a nap because you're so tired." She's like, "What are you going to do now?" I'm like, "Well, I'll probably be the same amount of tired, just half as fast." So like, I just won't have the benefit of saying, "Wow, I won" or something. I'm definitely not going to win. But we're going to try to have fun tomorrow. Cassie and Stephanie ran a half marathon yesterday. So they've got all the cardio. I need some of theirs because I don't have that. Pete and I are on the same wavelength here. Like, we've run a half marathon before, but like, we're good. One time's enough. So we're going to not finish today, but next week we're going to finish this small sermon series where we've been looking at 4 different fools in the book of Proverbs. And I love the book of Proverbs because it's like you can just go to that book and get small little precepts or bites of like wisdom that you can just, I read a verse and within one verse, I've got something to take away and chew on for the rest of the day. Like, I don't have to get a big context of a battle and all the background to this conflict and understand who's who and all that stuff. Like, you just go to book of Proverbs, like you read 1-2 verses and like, wow, that's amazing. There's so much wisdom packed into that little bit of information. So we're going to be in the book of Proverbs, but specifically the chapter 13. And I've shared this before, but one of the people I look to the most, especially as a kid growing up, born in the late 80s, but growing up in the 90s, man, Michael Jordan was like the guy. I would love to get his trading cards and just look at it, the way he would shoot or the way he dribbled with his tongue out and all that kind of stuff. Like, man, he is a hard worker. And he had this mentality like he couldn't lose. He was going to outwork everyone. But have you guys heard of the story about where he got cut by his high school team? Some of it, did you know that's false? It ruined my childhood. I'd like this whole idea that I had of Michael Jordan is that he got cut as a sophomore in high school from his basketball team. And then he went home, worked hard, made his way back onto the team. Well, turns out he was just on the JV team. He didn't get to go to the varsity team, so he still played. And the only reason he didn't make varsity is because it's pretty normal that 9th and 10th graders would stay on JV, 11th and 12th graders play varsity, is that his high school needed somebody taller for their varsity team, and he was not the tallest, so they took someone else that was taller than him, so he didn't get cut. So my whole idea of Michael Jordan kind of got skewed over this past week. Still like him because he's obviously made his way to be the greatest of all time, best basketball player ever. But this is a picture where he's in high school, and you can still see the form. He's got the tongue out. You can tell he is skilled. He's a natural talent. And then I put the picture on the right, playing another favorite basketball player of mine, Kobe Bryant, which had a lot of the same personality characteristics of just being someone who would outwork you, out-hustle you, all that kind of stuff. So what does that have to do with the book of Proverbs? Is that, well, we're going to talk about Christian work ethic. We're going to talk about not being lazy, working hard, and we don't want to be the fool who does not work hard. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 4 is what we're going to look at. And I put up here 3 different translations. I've got the NIV, ESV, NASB. And if you're ever doing Bible study, by the way, it would probably be beneficial to you to have other translations if you don't want to do like the deep original language study. Because what these do is the NIV translation, the way it was translated was kind of thought for thought. It would take a few words at a time and say, well, I think that's what that group of word means. Whereas ESV is a little bit different. The ESV is more word for word. So it's going to look at each word, the original Greek meaning, and, well, what English word best describes that definition of that word. and the NASB as well. The bottom two are probably more similar to a King James version if you grew up or still use that. I still love the King James version. NIV, still a good translation. My preference would be to use the one from the 1980s and not 2011. There's a few changes that one made that I think aren't the greatest. So I'll read these for you. NIV, a sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Now, there's a few different changes in the words. ESV says the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. The soul of the lazy one, NASB, the soul of the lazy one craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is made prosperous. If you combine all of those together and look at just some of the key phrases here, what is a sluggard? Some translation would actually just say a lazy person, but it refers to a lazy or idle person. This is who we don't want to be, by the way. And what is the craving? Man, I would imagine you probably all have a good idea what a craving is. You might even crave sweets or crave a Dr. Pepper, like I do sometimes. But it's a strong desire. You long for this. Whatever you're craving, like you're thinking about it. You're trying to find ways to get it, whatever it is. So it's a strong desire or longing. Diligent, that describes someone who is industrious. They're hardworking. When I think of diligent, it's people that I think of that no matter what gets in their way, no matter what their schedule looks like, they're going to make sure the work gets done. They're diligent in their work. They don't slack off. They don't procrastinate. They just do it. And then richly supplied. Here, I want to stop on this one for just a minute, because there's a chance that if you read this verse, NIV says fully satisfied, ESV says richly supplied, NASB says made prosperous. What I don't want you to take away from the richly supplied is the idea that if I just work hard, I will always be financially rich. That doesn't actually mean it. Because then you would say, well, the only way I can be this person is if I'm rich. And that's not what we're going to get at. So being richly supplied means this. It means they are abundantly satisfied. Think of like contentment, being okay with what you have, not being jealous of what somebody else has or how much they make, or they're well provided for. They have what they need. They may even have what they want. So out of that verse, we can find this idea is that when we're diligent, it brings fulfillment. But laziness leaves our desires unfulfilled. You might be a person who I really want that, but you just don't put the work in. Think of somebody like this. I really want to be healthy, but man, I just love my pop. I love my Little Debbies, and I'm not going to give those up. So that desire to be healthy, to be in shape or something, like you might say it, but your desires are going to be unfulfilled because you're lazy. You're either lazy in your commitment or lazy in just going through with that commitment. So diligence brings fulfillment while laziness leaves desires unfulfilled. I want to give some theology on work because you might already be thinking, man, I work hard. And to be honest with you, as I was preparing for this message, I don't know if hard work is necessarily the problem with adults. It can be. And maybe it's just the people I'm around. I don't know. I find us overworking or not putting our priorities straight. We're stretched so thin that maybe we're not as effective as we should be. So to give you some theology on work, let's go all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. Did you know that God created work? God himself works. So Genesis chapter 1, he's, during the creation, he says, God saw that all that he had made. God was working. God made the earth. He made everything that's in the earth, and he saw it was very good. And then evening came, and then morning, and the sixth day. but God created work. Even before we were created, God himself was busy at work. So God created it. And then we go a little bit further. We see that God assigned us work. It says in verse 28 of chapter 1, God blessed them, and God said to them, here's our job description, by the way. When God created man and woman, he said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. There's a lot into that subdue word, though. Like when you think about what we do as human beings, what we're free to do, what we can use our mind and creativity to do, there's a lot to that word subdue. But we are to rule over all the animals. It says the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, every creature that crawls on the earth. God has appointed human beings to be the ones who subdue and rule over everything. What is amazing to me is, like, we are not the strongest creature. Obviously, there's much stronger creatures that could easily kill us. But we're the only part of creation that was made in the image of God. And we have so much more, obviously, mind, body, soul. There's so much more to us than just, well, like an animal would be. But God gave us a job description. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. And then let's look at 3 passages in Proverbs that talks about hard work. You could write these down if you like. I'll probably put these in an email for those who have signed up for our sermon companion materials. Proverbs 14:23, there's profit in all hard work, but endless talk leads to only poverty. And then Proverbs 26:16, in his own eyes a slacker is wiser than 7 who can answer sensibly. Think about last week when we talked about the person who just thinks they know it all, and like, don't be that person. Don't be the person who just thinks they're more wise, they've got all the answers. Don't do that. To be honest with you, that kind of fits the description of the slacker. A slacker thinks he's wiser than 7 who are probably wiser, because it says they can answer sensibly. And then Proverbs 27:1 says, don't boast about tomorrow, for you don't know what a day might bring. And so the context there in that verse, though, is you're not promised tomorrow. So don't put off for tomorrow what could be done today. That's a good thing that my mom taught me. Hard work and Proverbs. There's 3 of those there. And to summarize those 3, Proverbs teaches that being lazy, having nothing, and using your smarts or your brain wrongly are the opposite of working hard and taking good advice. So to succeed, not doing those things, we need to work hard. We need to follow wise guidance. And we cannot be lazy if we want to be smart in our work. I'll give you a quick illustration of me and my dad growing up. My dad is the definition of work hard, not smart. Like, sometimes he would take the long way around to get something done. And in my brain, I probably was not always wise in this, but I was always thinking, man, how can I do this faster? How can I do this with less effort? And I would always just say, well, let's work smart, not hard. Have you guys heard that, right? Yeah, you've heard that phrase. That was my goal. Like, find the easiest way to do something. And here's where our mindsets would clash. Dad would work hard, not smart. And sometimes that would cause him to take 2 to 3 hours on a job that should have taken an hour. Me, I would find a shortcut, take me an hour, but would cut corners, and sometimes it would make I'd have to do it over again, and it really wouldn't benefit me any to do it that way. What I think Proverbs is teaching us is that we need to work hard and smart. It's both. It's not one or the other, because we can work hard, do it the most efficient way, but make sure it's done right as well. This past week, I was reading a book, and by the way, I would recommend looking this one up. You can get it. I did get on Amazon, but it's from Lifeway Publishing. It's called Teach Them to Work. I'm about halfway through it. I think I've got about 3 hours into the book. It takes about 6 hours to do the audiobook, by the way. I'm not that much of a reader, but if I can find an audiobook, I can get through it. But it's called Teach Them to Work. I think it's called, or the author's name is Mary Keeb. I didn't have this in my notes, but I'm just thinking about it right now. Because there's two takeaways I want you to take away from this idea in Proverbs, that we need to not be the fool who's lazy. We need to be somebody who works hard. Is one, we need to be able to model this, but also teach children how to work hard. I'll just put this up here for now. Obviously, a lot of us are putting gardens in right now, right? Ray's got his in. Brandon, you got yours in. Anybody else got their garden in so far? A couple of you. I know you're supposed to get them in by Memorial Day. At least that's the goal. Maybe you go in later. But we need to teach our children the correct way to work. In the book, she makes an observation, as she was actually quoting somebody else in this book, is that for the youngest children, it's not always good for us to put them to work right away. And a lot of times their work is play. They figure out how to work by doing different things, playing games, playing with their toys, maybe picking up the toys when they're done. You don't just put a 2-year-old out into the garden and say, hey, make sure you dig the holes, plant the plant, fill it in, water it, make sure it's good. Like there's a balance of progressing into teaching a child how to work. But for you and I, at least this is the way it seems, as you get into adulthood, become a spouse, become a parent, your playtime just decreases. And your work increases. It's like as you mature into that role, those two things kind of collide in the middle, and all of a sudden you're working way more than playing. And that's good, that's okay. Again, going back to the beginning, at Genesis, work was created and it was assigned to us even before Adam and Eve sinned. Now, sin came into the picture and made it more difficult for us. It's more difficult to grow a garden because of the thorns and the thistles and the weeds and all that stuff that we have to also work alongside to try to keep the plants alive. We got to keep all the bad stuff out. But we do need to teach our children the correct way to work. Our society, it seems like every single topic has an extreme. You can either be the lazy sluggard on one end and you don't work at all, and man, everything that you're supposed to be doing, you're not doing. At work, you're barely keeping a job. At home, you don't take care of stuff at home. Like, it's just the extreme laziness. And then our society also has the other extreme of overworking. You work so much that you don't put in the time to be with your family, to be with your children. So there's extremes. But what is the correct way to balance those? We do need to teach our children that life is not all about play. And to be honest with you, Cassie and I are still trying to figure this out. It's a little bit difficult because obviously they do want to play, and they're kids, and we're like, we don't want to ruin their childhood by not letting them play and just making them work. But that's not entirely correct, that we would be doing them a disservice by not teaching them how to work. Because eventually one day they will have to work. They're going to have to get their license and get a job and do an interview, and they're going to need to know what it's like to work for 8 hours a day before they get to that point. I think farm kids may be at an advantage here because they kind of grow up like, hey, look, the family's working, you're going to work. At least that's how it's been with the families that I know that work on a farm. So we're trying to figure this out. How can we as parents take our kids who are 7 and 4 and say, hey, we can't play all day. At some point, we got to stop and do our work. We got to do our chores. We got to brush our teeth. We got to take our bath, and we got to do other things. We got to feed the dogs. We got to go out and water the garden. Like, we do need to teach them those things. So I don't have like a magic formula, like at this age, you need this many hours of work, this many hours of play. But to just put that out there for those of you who are parents right now raising little kids, it is something we need to figure out. It is something that we need to keep in our minds, that we are only with our kids for so many years. And I think our job is to, yes, raise them in the knowledge of Jesus Christ so they can make a decision on their own about salvation for eternity, but also to prepare them for adulthood and say, hey, you need to learn these things before you leave the house and enter into adulthood. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you, so maybe you're not at the stage where you have kids. Maybe you're out of that stage. So you're wondering, well, I do work hard, or I don't even know how I can apply this to my life right now. I want to show you this picture. I probably took this with an Android phone. It's like super blurry. I wasn't picking on Android phones because some of you do have those, but I took this in like 2010 maybe. So it's when the smartphones had just come out, or at least they were fairly new. I don't know why I was doing this, but I was working. I was the service advisor, and this guy was my boss. His name's Bill Serena. Haven't seen him in a long time. I was recording my boss cleaning the runway where the cars come in and out. I was not working. I should not have been doing this. Because I must have just been standing at my desk recording him with my cell phone. But I remember recording him because I thought, that's a great boss. And he was a really good boss. He stood up for me in times that the owner, who was a jerk sometimes, would just come out and cuss people out. And he's done that. He did that to me a few times. And Bill would come up and say, hey, like, why are you cussing him out for? Like, he didn't have anything to do with this problem. Bill was a great guy. Bill was a good boss, and he modeled good work ethic, where even something like cleaning the floor, he would do. We were about to close up. I remember when this was happening. We would have to clean the floor each day. And while James was probably being lazy, I guess, my boss was out there pushing a squeegee, cleaning the floor. So thinking about your positions in your life, what areas do you have influence and position that you can help somebody else understand what good work ethic is? That you're not modeling being a lazy sluggard, and you are modeling someone who works hard. So are you a grandparent? Are you a parent? Are you an employee? Maybe you're retired and you're like, I don't even know. Like, how can I do this? One, I think you can pray, God, would you help me find ways where I can still work hard and influence other people for positive, to show them your love, to show them your truth, something like that. Even if you're physically unable to do something, you can still study. You can still use your mind. You might not be able to use your body like you used to, but you can still be a positive influence and say, here's what a good work ethic looks like, even at an old age, or even at a physical disability, even at blah, blah, blah. Don't make up an excuse to say why you can't be a hard worker. So for Bill Serena, for me, even though I've not seen this guy in a long time, and I was a young man when he hired me, young man when I was standing at my desk recording him doing the hard work of pushing a squeegee on the floor, that video, it's actually a video, that's a screenshot of the video, replays my mind sometimes of, I need to be like Bill. I need to not think that anything's above me or below me, that I can't scrub a toilet, that I can't vacuum, that I can't do something, because if I just work hard, I can be an influence to other people. So Bill has no idea that I recorded him doing this, but he was a model for me. And I still think about that till today, 10, 15 years later, whatever it's been. So worship team, you guys can go ahead and come on up. I could do a whole nother sermon on rest and the idea of Sabbathing. And it probably would be a more difficult message for me because we don't do it real well. To be honest with you, I don't even know if we know how to do it real well, like God intended us to do. But for today, when we look at the fools in Proverbs, let's not be the fool who doesn't work hard. Because like those three verses summarized, and even the idea of Proverbs 13:4, that diligence brings fulfillment, while laziness leaves desired unfulfilled. So maybe this morning you need to think about the areas in your life where you could be more productive. You could be more efficient. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's, man, I spent too much time scrolling and I've wasted a lot of time doing that. Or maybe it's entertainment, TV, that, I spend 3 hours a day watching TV. If I just didn't do that, maybe I could make some phone calls, see how somebody's doing. Maybe I could write a letter to somebody. Diligently working hard will bring fulfillment. But when we're lazy, at the end of the day, you put your head on your pillow and think, man, could have got a lot more done today. I could have actually done something productive. I could have done something for somebody else maybe to help them bring more joy to their life. I could have done a lot. Let's not waste the 167 hours outside of a Sunday morning. Let's not waste them. Let's do our best to work hard. If you would, let's stand if you're able. I'll pray. And if, man, maybe this is an area you need prayer. You need, I need God to help me do better at this. Or maybe there's something else. Maybe you need prayer for healing. Maybe you need prayer for somebody else in your life. I am always available for that. I'm sure others would be as well. So while they close us in a song, I'm offering that to you. I love you. And honestly, throughout my week, I think about you guys all week as I'm preparing. Pray for you guys often, even if you don't ask for it.